Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. Do open-plan offices cause people to get tired? This was a question that was being asked of Susan Cain, the author of Quiet. And it was an interview, and they were talking about energy and how introverts get very tired in offices where there are all these cubicles and there's no specific office space where you can cut yourself off and, just stay away from people. And the entire discussion went down the path of energy. In fact, this entire podcast is about energy. Most people think about time. They think, oh wait, I need time. I need more time. You don't need more time. Well, everyone needs time, but essentially you need more energy. Because if you think about it, what drains your energy causes you to get that slump by the end of the day or even in the middle of the day. So how do you keep that energy going? How come there are some people who have energy at the end of the day and others just fall flat on their face? That's what this episode is about, and it's backed by some pretty good research, so listen to it. This is episode number 5 in a series of 8 reruns that we're having, and we'll be back somewhere late Jan, and we'll have new episodes then. But for now, you'll enjoy this episode. He wanted to understand what kept the world's top competitors head and shoulders above their competition. And so he watched hundreds of hours of live games, and then he followed up by poring over taped matches. Despite putting in so much rigor, so much effort into his research, he ran right into a brick wall. He noticed that during points, high-caliber players appeared to be remarkably similar to each other. There seemed to be little or no difference in the way they went about their game. Then Lur looked closer and he began to look at what players did in between the points. And that's when he had his eureka moment. The best players, it seemed, had consciously or subconsciously built up a routine. As they headed back, they had a type of walk. They held their heads and their shoulders in a certain way. And most importantly, their breathing seemed to slow down. These players were playing their shots and then, amazingly, going through a recovery method while getting ready for the next shot. So he decided to dig deeper. So Lur decides to make this really scientific. He hooks up the top players to EKG telemetry and he decides, well, I'm going to measure their heart rates. And he found that their heart rates were dropping as many as 20 beats per minute. This was in between points. And then he hooked up the players that were not the top players. Jim Loehr and Tony Schwartz have a book. It's called The Powerful Engagement. It's the key to being super productive. It's what you need to have enormous amounts of energy. And to drive home this point, they give the example of 2 players of relatively equal talent, equal fitness. The players are in full flow. They've given the match their all. But as the match progresses, as the game reaches the 3rd hour, which one of the players is going to be less fatigued? Which one is going to be more angry, more frustrated? Who's going to push his heart rate even higher, resulting in muscular tension and a drop in concentration? the one who has been recovering in between points is clearly far ahead because he's got far more energy. When you think of energy, nothing quite fits the analogy like an electric car. A petrol-driven car is a car with no fear. You can put $5 worth of fuel in it, and sure enough, you will find a petrol station along the way when you need one. With an electric car, it's totally different, at least at this point in time. You can't expect the same level of topping up. You can't just top up your electric car. You have to work it out to get to your destination, to get back. An electric car requires the driver to move forward without sudden acceleration. Brakes are applied only in absolute emergency situations, and most slowing down involves a generous amount of anticipation. In short, the electric car has a fixed battery life. And if you manage to drive your car well, the car even recharges while you're moving ahead. An electric car and Lur's research, they seem to align almost perfectly. Energy needs to be used to propel us forward, but we have to make sure we not only recharge, but we also avoid energy depletion. Which is why it's a good idea to look at these three elements of energy so that we too can ditch time management and work on energy management instead. So here's what we'll cover. The first is work-rest ratios. The second is what depletes energy. And the third is a backup battery. (1972) was a scary year for Southwest Airlines. They had been battling it out on the ground for many years just to get the right to fly. But right alongside their legal battles, there loomed a threat that was promising to put them out of business. They were hemorrhaging on cash, and in order to pay the bills, they had to sell one of their 4 planes. However, the vice president of ground operations, named Bill Franklin, he decided that they weren't going to just roll over and play dead. So they made a very bold calculation. They came to the conclusion that 3 planes could do the work of 4. There was just one tiny problem to overcome. The planes had to be in and out of the gates in 10 minutes. The plane had to be cleaned, restocked, and refueled, and this required about an hour. But Southwest had little or no option. They were either going to keep their planes in the air or they would go out of business. It was known that aeroplanes only make money in the air. And that's the kind of attitude that we have when we're on the ground. Many of us see ourselves as a product of hard work, of having to keep going and going and going, and having little or no turnaround time, of always having to be in the air. Internet marketers boast how they're spending time working at the beach, usually in their underwear. And all of this talk about being always connected, always at work, always putting down rest as if it were a disease, this is what causes us to feel constantly tired. What we need are work-rest ratios. This factor of work-rest ratios isn't news to you, is it? It shouldn't be, and yet we ignore it as though we have fuel-driven engines. We fail to see that every day seems to have a prescribed amount of work and then real rest. And every week has 5 days of work and then 2 days off. Every quarter needs a break. Every year needs many breaks. And though not all of us can, at this point in time, do a 3-month-long vacation, almost all of us can work with just the day, these 24 hours that you have. It's so blindingly obvious that even just listening to this information seems bizarre. Yet, when you look around you, you'll find almost no one but the kids are bouncing around like crazy. Well, those kids aren't watching TV until late at night, are they? They aren't scrolling through their devices endlessly either. They're asleep. They're doing what performance coaches advise their clients. A good night's sleep is the most obvious thing of all. And it's what we seem to ignore on a consistent basis just because we don't wind down before bedtime. Is it any wonder that we seem to be tired all the time? So what's the quickest thing that you can do and you can do today? Be like a kid. Figure out a bedtime for yourself and then wind down. If we just skip half an hour of sleep every night, we're depriving ourselves of a good 3.5 hours every week, and this accumulates over time. Weekends, or even half the weekend, is what we should mark out to rest and recover. But we're always busy doing stuff. And if you speak to someone, they say, this stuff has to be done. Who's going to do it? Only I can do it. But there is a downside to being constantly like a plane in the air. You're compromising on your performance. As you clock in more hours, you take more time to do the very same task. And there is also a greater chance of errors. What's weird about sleep is that the more rested you are, the better you sleep. The more rested you are, the better you sleep. Think about the times when you're agitated, and it's clear that your sleep was just as disturbed. So without going round and round and round, we need to understand a simple philosophy. You have to get the work-rest ratio consistent. In the book, The Power of Full Engagement, the authors talk about how, at times, you have to break away. You have to break away from these work-rest ratios. Sometimes we have to build capacity and we have to increase our stress level. So we have to work more. But then that needs to be followed by adequate recovery. You need to do both. You need to push beyond limits sometimes, and then you need to have enough recovery. But work-rest ratios are not enough. There is something more, something even deeper. And that is to explore what depletes energy in the first place. Let's take a hard look at energy depletion. It's Wednesday morning here in New Zealand as I do this podcast. But this Wednesday isn't like last Wednesday or the Wednesday before last. That's because on all those previous Wednesdays, I didn't have the pleasure of having to have the script and then record the podcast. However, this week I've fallen behind and the pressure is building up. The more I delay, the more my mind is focused on the task of writing and then recording the podcast. Every time I'm thinking about that podcast, I wake up, I go for a walk, I'm having a coffee, the podcast is there at the back of my mind. This is energy depletion. It isn't something that is immediately apparent, but it's all around us. But let's say you have to cook a dish. What does the professional chef do? She makes sure that there is a sequence in place. No professional chef does what we often tend to do. In one morning, we're likely to get a recipe, buy the ingredients, chop and prepare the ingredients, and then begin to cook the meal. What we've done is gone through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and so on. By the time we're ready to cook, we're already tired. That's not how a professional chef works. Every stage is separate so that the chef is at their highest possible energy for each stage. And when I go back in time, I realize that I haven't been using that energy in a smart way, because this is how I used to write an article back in the year 2001. I'd start with the idea, then I'd do little or nothing. I would definitely not outline, but then I'd just start to write, and what I was doing was editing in the middle of my writing. I'd go a line forward and 2 lines back. Eventually, after a brutal 2 days or so, I'd be done with the article. However, even after all that struggle, I didn't know if I had a good article or not. What's more is that I'd be exhausted. I'd dread having to write another article in the following week. When I look back at the way I created sales pages, or I wrote articles, or I cooked, or I painted, all my activities were amazingly designed to create energy depletion. Today, my methods are radically different. Take, for instance, the dish I prepared this morning. I soaked it last night, I chopped the ingredients, and early this morning at about 10:45 a.m., I went back home and then I cooked the dish. Writing an article, say the article for this podcast, for instance, involves a similar method. Again, you're using stages. I'm using stages. So I've got a bunch of post-it stickers on the wall, and all of them have topics that I want to write about. When I'm ready to take on the topic, I go to the cafe or I go to the park bench, and then I outline the article. I'll then split the article into 3 parts and write the article over 3 days, taking a day to cover each section. If the task isn't broken up, the energy required to go from one end to the other is often too great. You can expend the energy, but it takes enormous time to recover. Completing tasks is only one form of energy depletion. People and situations also play an incredibly important role in depleting energy. Take, for instance, this workshop that we had in California back in 2006. One of the clients was terribly demanding, and we were still new in the business, so we bent over backwards to make this customer happy. And I guess she was happy, I don't know, but we were so drained at the end of the day. It's a good thing they have these giant margaritas in California, because I needed more than one to just feel like a human again. The same thing applies to situations. So we go for a walk every day, and sometimes a car will just pull out of the driveway. And then there's such a little gap between that car and what we have to walk through. And so I'll go behind the car and then I'll glare back at the driver. And you see what's happening? It's all a depletion of energy. That small incident can make me quite upset. It can rattle me for the next 10 or 20 minutes. Now, you put in a few of these very small events in a day, and it's not hard to see why we can be super exhausted, super drained at the end of the day. Being constantly distracted is also an energy depletion factor. No one is allowed to be bored anymore. If you're bored for more than 3 seconds, you reach for your phone, you surf the internet, you look at what's on Facebook. This behavior is remarkably different from the way my parents, and possibly your parents, use the internet. So my father goes online, he looks for something, he checks the weather, but it's always that specific task. His phone isn't a distraction device. Instead, he uses it like a tool, like a hammer. Now, you and I, we reach for it when we are bored. We're always going online. We're endlessly searching for something to push away that boredom. And this is a factor of constant energy depletion. So the key to understand energy is to see what is depleting our energy. It's easy to see where all these negative energy fields exist in our daily lives. Maybe it's a job we hate. Maybe it's a person that drives us crazy. Maybe it's a situation. Maybe it's a course that's going nowhere. Maybe it's a friend or relative that puts us down. Maybe we called the bank and they drove us crazy. All of this stuff is draining. And there are some energy fields that are hard to avoid. So how do you cope when you know you're bound to run into energy depletion zones? How do you cope with it when it happens every single day? How do you know when it's all reactive and there's nothing you can do? What you need is a reserve battery. A reserve battery pack, and here's how you get one. Let's find out in the third section. Imagine writing a complete article and finding it's vanished into thin air. That's what happened to me today. Granted, it takes me just about 45 to 60 minutes to write an article, but this one was longer. It would take me at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to get the job done the second time. My first instinct was not to recreate. That would be crazy. So I went on a hunt. I searched high and low, but 25 minutes later I had nothing. Right before that moment of seeming despair, I had loaded up my backup battery. For 30 minutes every morning I meditate, simply because of the returns I get from meditation. At first, meditation was just something to try out. However, when you go through a day from 4 a.m. and you're still energized at 9 p.m., eyebrows need to be raised. So what I'm saying is meditation is my backup battery. I don't know how it works. All I know is that it just does. Now, if you could stop your day for 30 minutes and then you could get several hours of renewed energy, would you do it? Think about time management versus energy management for a few seconds. We're all focused on time, but at 5 p.m., you're tired, you're exhausted. You have time, but you have no energy. Now imagine having enough energy as you go through the day, then through the evening, and even late at night. It sounds so bizarre that I didn't believe it. I once heard the comedian Jerry Seinfeld saying approximately the same thing in an interview, but I thought it was not possible. Maybe he doesn't spend long hours like me, I thought. Well, I was wrong, not once, but twice over. The second and possibly even better reason for meditation is the capacity to deal with energy draining situations. You feel like screaming at the traffic? You're angry because some new law got passed to the council? Clients are driving you crazy? Well, suddenly, you're able to see all these people, events, and situations as if you're a bystander. It almost feels like it's not something that's affecting you, but it's happening to someone else. Instead of grumbling, getting mad, and clearly draining your energy, you have a feeling of going with the flow. You remember that article I told you, that article that I lost? I did my best to search for it, but instead of getting upset, I went about it in a calm and composed manner. Even though my problem wasn't solved, I simply went about doing some other activity. Then today, while I was searching for something else, I found the article. Now I know, it sounds like luck. Maybe I wouldn't have found the article, and all of this might sound like gobbledygook. And believe me, I thought that was the same. I thought that it wasn't going to work out, this meditation stuff. But I believe in results as well. And if this supposed gobbledygook is going to help recharge my batteries, and more importantly, keep me from draining them, then that's exactly what I need. This is why I meditate every day for 30 minutes. And if you're wondering whether you're going to get those 30 minutes or where you're going to get those 30 minutes, remember, it's the concept of the electric car, because the car is remarkably similar to your phone. When you charge a device for 30 minutes, it lasts longer, but even if you charge it for 10 or 15 minutes, a charge is still a charge. But if you charge it for 0 minutes, you get 0. The backup battery is just boring old meditation. It's the kind of stuff that they've done for thousands of years. So you have to decide, are you going to charge your battery with a longer charge or maybe a shorter charge? And that is what the backup battery is all about. And this takes us to the summary, where we look at the 3 aspects of energy. I wasted too much time getting angry. So said world-famous tennis champion John McEnroe. McEnroe and his arch-rival Jimmy Connors had similar temperaments on court. Both of them were easily provoked, yet both of them managed to get to the number 1 ranking in the world for many years consecutively. Both of them also won Grand Slams. What's interesting about this story is that Connors was considered to be the lesser player. It was more than apparent that McEnroe had this flair that helped him even when he was fuming and screaming. Yet McEnroe was gone from the tennis scene by the age of 34, and Connors was still around at the highest level even at the age of 40. It's not hard to see what's happening, is it? Energy starts to escape at the very moment you rant and rave. It might seem like you're disrupting your opponent, But by McEnroe's own admission, he did better when his temper was in control. From an energy perspective, we need to look at three core elements. The first is the work-rest ratio. The second is what depletes your energy. And the third is the need to have the backup battery. Without the rest, we simply drain our batteries until our system can't handle it anymore. The more we work, the more we have to rest. When you rest, you come back fresher, you come back more eager to do better work. At Psychotactics, we take breaks whenever we possibly can. Through the day, we take breaks. On weekends, we take breaks. And then after 12 weeks of work, we take a month off. Now, you may not be able to take those 3 months off. It might be too much at this stage of your business. But rest and work is important. If you want to do better work, you have to rest more. It's that simple. The second point is the more important point. It's about monitoring what depletes our energy. Losing our cool takes up a huge ton of energy right through the day. Things invariably go wrong. Chaos is almost always hovering around us all the time. In the face of almost constant and overbearing trouble, how do we avoid depletion of energy? There's also a depletion that comes from a lack of stages. Without stages, without outlining, we take on too much. And then we're invariably tired as we move through the sequence. A little spacing out of stages, whether you're writing a book or an article or just cooking dinner, is what you need to keep your energy at high levels. And finally, we have the third thing, which is the backup battery, and that is meditation. Now, some people say, well, they listen to music and that gets their energy up. I don't know. I listen to music. I do all the stuff. I walk. I do all the things that people say bring you energy. This may sound odd, but I think meditation is different. So if you have 12 minutes, that's 12 minutes of backup battery in place. If you have 30 minutes, so much the better. But maybe 12 minutes will counter 12 minutes of chaos. And the net effect is that you're not losing energy. You're stable, you're calm and happy. Life takes you on this diversion, and instead of getting mad and upset, you go along like a child, glad to be part of the adventure. We live in a world hostile to rest. We trust coffee more than meditation as a pick-me-up. We lose energy all the time, and we aren't sure how to get it back. Well, now you know. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. So what's happening in Psychotactics land? The first two home study versions that are going to be available next year are the information products and the article writing course. So these are both home study, and I think with the article writing course, we're also going to have a live version. So watch out for the dates, because you have to be on the waiting list. You have to have read The Brain Audit, which you can get on Amazon or you can get from our site. The information products will be on the 25th of Jan 2018, and then the article writing course will be available on the 15th of March 2018 as well. So you have to be on the waiting list, otherwise you don't get any sales page. You can't buy this stuff. I know it's weird. That's how we do stuff at Psychotactics. It's all weird. You might also want to jump into 5000 BC. We're not around right now, as you know, but you can get into 5000 BC. You can have a look at the articles, introduce yourself. And the interesting thing about 5000 BC is that we have clients that pitch in. And so right now there are cave elves. I know it's Christmas time, and we have cave elves through the year, by the way. So they will be there to help you if you need any help. And we will be back shortly. So that's 5000bc.com. And that's me, Sean D'Souza, saying bye for now. Still listening? One of the coolest things about 5000 BC and psychotactics in general is that when we need help, we don't outsource, we insource. So we go to clients. Whenever we've had a workshop, clients have found the venues, they've checked out the venues, they've checked out the prices, they've taken photographs, they've told us, hey, there's fungus on the walls, you shouldn't be booking this place. So we're always insourcing. At 5000 BC, the cave elves come in, they help a lot. And what you want to do at some level is to get your clients to participate, get your clients to pitch in. We have this at workshops as well. Someone is in charge of the food, someone is in charge of some sort of entertainment, and it's a very good way to go about stuff. And it allows us, especially under these conditions, when we go away, for the cave elves to come in and to be part of that organization. And you can experience this if you get into 5000 BC. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be a cave elf as well. So ho 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 and bye for now.